Welcome to animal diversity. Right. So, with animal diversity, we're going to be looking at the different phylums under the kingdom Animalia. Obviously, we're not going to look at all of them, right? Because there's a lot, right? We're going to be looking at phylums such as your Porifera, your uh, your chordata, platyhelminths, and so forth. Right? Skipping some like your echinodermata. What else are we going to skip? Your nematodes, your roundworms. Right? So basically, what are we going to be looking at when we look at these different phyla under the kingdom Animalia? We're going to be looking at different characteristics, linking it with the body plans that we did in the previous lesson. Ne? Good. So, what are we going to be looking at when I speak of these characteristics of these organisms? What am I going to be looking at? I will be looking at things such as where are these organisms found? GPS, location, location, location. So we must know where organisms are found, for example, yeah? And then the symmetry, for example, symmetry. Remember, we did symmetry in the previous lesson. Then, what else are we going to be looking at? We're going to be looking at the gut opening. Do they have a gut opening or not? Like another thing, cephalization. Do they have a concentration of sense organs on the anterior end? That is the head end, if there is such a thing. Ne? Good. So, do they have a concentration of their sense organs at the anterior end? So, that is cephalization. Cephalization. Then another thing we're going to be looking at is germ layers. Germ layers. How many germ layers do they have? Are they diploblastic or triploblastic? Or some do not even have these germ layers? Ne? Good. And then, what else? Body plans, body cavity, we're going to be looking at the body cavity. Does it have a xylem or not? Is it a xylomate, axylomate, stuff like that, right? And then lastly, blood systems. I'm going to be looking at blood systems. Does it have a blood system, basically an open blood system or a closed blood system? And what is the advantage of having it or not having it? And why do certain animals have it and some animals do not even have a blood system? Right? Good. So that is a summary of more or less what we're going to be discussing. Right? Good. First things first, our first stop is the phylum Porifera. Porifera. The phylum Porifera. Okay, let's do this phylum. Remember, it's a phylum. That's the taxonomic group. Phylum Porifera. These are the sponges, aka the sponges. Not the sponges that you use inside your kitchen when you do your dishes, but these are alive. These are live animals, your natural sponges. They are living animals. They vary in sizes from a few millimeters to a few meters. So they vary in size. Then they are brightly colored. Most of them are brightly colored, as you can see on these pictures, like SpongeBob over here. The only thing bad about this is that SpongeBob, uh-huh, SpongeBob in the series or the cartoon moves, and sponges do not move. Sponges are known to be sessile or sedentary. Meaning what? Meaning that they are attached to a substrate and then they can never move from that substrate for the surface in which they are attached to. They cannot move on their own. So they are sessile. So next time you watch SpongeBob, just know that there's a lie there. Sponges do not move. They made it a cartoon so that SpongeBob can move. Right. Where do you find this? These are aquatic organisms. Aquatic. Meaning they live in water. They are submerged in water. So these are water animals. Their structure is irregular. They have irregular structures. With them having an irregular structure, meaning they have no symmetry whatsoever. So they are asymmetrical. Meaning, if I cut the sponge at one plane longitudinal, I would not get two identical halves from any plane. If I cut it, I will not get two identical halves. So basically they are asymmetrical. So that's the one thing you should know about these organisms. Now, next, this means that they cannot be cut into two identical halves, right? Their body wall is made up of two layers. These layers are basically the outer epidermis and the inner layer of cells. So basically, they have a thin layer. They are filter feeders. That's how they feed. So basically, they exchange gases and food with their environment. With that being said, if they are filter feeders, they can feed from from almost any part of their body. They do not need a blood system. So these organisms do not have a blood system. Ne? They do not have what do I mean? A circulatory system. So there is no blood system whatsoever. Blood system is absent, right? Good. So another thing, they do not have a xylem. These organisms do not have a xylem. So when we go to a body cavity, we say there is no xylem. Xylem. They do not have a body cavity. With them not having a body cavity, that means they do not have germ layers. Ne? Good. So they cannot be called a coelomate per se. They just don't have any body cavity. So they have no coelom. Good. Another thing, the germ layers, they have no real germ layers. No, so there's no real germ layers. And then there's no cephalization whatsoever, and no gut opening. So these are pretty primitive, simple organisms, your phylum, Porifera, your sponges. There's a way in which I used to cram this in school. Phylum, Porifera, pores mean, not the pores like you stay stationary, like the pores that you have on your skin, little holes, right? Sponges have little holes on them. Well, most of them. They have little holes on them. So these are the Porifera, your sponges. Right, so that is your phylum Porifera, these sedentary aquatic organisms. Simple and primitive. Next one is your jellyfish, which SpongeBob likes to hunt, right? These fall under the phylum Nidaria. I know. I do not like the way it is written. This is the phylum Nidaria, the taxonomic group, the phylum Nidaria. I know the C is silent. I science words just confuse me as well, but it's written as Nidaria. So Nidaria, what are they? The phylum Nidaria, these are your jellyfishes, your hydra, and so forth. Ne? These are aquatic organisms. Ne? These are aquatic. So GPS, location. These are aquatic, meaning they live and are submerged in water. These include your Japanese man o' war, your jellyfish, and so forth. They are aquatic organisms. They are mainly marine, but some do occur in fresh water. Some organisms belonging to this phylum are sedentary for their entire life cycle. For example, the sea anemone and the hydra, they are sedentary. Wait, yes, this one. The sea anemone and the hydra. So those ones that are attached to their substrate, they remain sedentary for their entire life cycle. So some are sedentary, but jellyfish, that's why SpongeBob has to chase them. They move. So basically they are free living. So some can swim and move, but some are sedentary. So we cannot say all of them are sedentary. Now let's take a look at their structure. If you look at a jellyfish, for example, if I was to draw one from the top, let's say this is our jellyfish. How many tentacles? One, two. How many tentacles does jellyfish have? Many, right? But for the sake of this, we're gonna just draw 6. There's a jellyfish. We drew a jellyfish from the top. Now, if I cut this jellyfish, where's my pen? Oh yeah, here we go. If I cut it from this plane here, I get two identical halves, 1 and 2. If I cut it from this side, this plane, I get two identical halves, half 1 and half 2. So basically, If I can cut it from any plane, and this organism produces two identical halves. Now we come to the symmetry of this organism. We say that this organism is radially symmetrical. So it has a radial symmetry. It has radial symmetry. Whether they are free swimming or sedentary, all of them have a radial symmetry. Great. Now, another part of their body plans. They have a single digestive opening. What does that tell us about their gut opening? They have a blind gut. If you have one opening, basically they have one opening to eat and defecate, or meaning to pass out waste, right? So this is a problem. This is a problem. If you have a blind gut, so you use that one opening to take in food and take out waste. So basically, ingestion and egestion cannot happen simultaneously. We cannot solve this equation simultaneously. So basically, that's a disadvantage. Unlike us humans, we have two openings. We have a through gut. You can sit on the toilet and do number two. Basically, you defecate, pass out feces while you're eating a sandwich. It is possible, but these cannot, right? So they have a blind gut. Ne? Good. So this digestive opening occurs on the free end of the sedentary stage. So basically, if basically like these ones, if they are sedentary, the mouth will occur right over here. Well, I'll call it a mouth for the sake of content. And on the other underside of the free swimming organisms. So if they are free swimming and not sedentary, the mouth is usually on the underside, just like your jellyfish. So that is the phylum Cnidaria. Yeah? Good. All forms of cnidarians, all of them, whether they are sedentary or free swimming, yeah, they have two germ layers. Right? Kind of what we say. Which germ layers are those? Those two germ layers are the ectoderm and the endoderm. So what do we call organisms that have two germ layers? We say that these organisms are diploidal. Plastic. Di meaning two. They have two germ layers. They have the outer ectoderm and the inner ectoderm. These layers are separated from each other by a non-cellular jelly-like layer or substance called the mesoglia. But that's neither here or there, right? Good. So the general function of all the ectodermal cells that your cnidarians have is basically to detect stimuli such as food or danger. And then the ectoderm also contains special type of cell that basically are used for stinging. Ne? Good, for when they catch prey. So that is your phylum Cnidaria. So let's talk about something that we haven't talked about, their body cavity. Yeah? These organisms do not have a body cavity, so there's no body cavity. Yeah? They have no body cavity, so these are acoelomates. So we call them acoelomates. What sets them apart from the Porifera is that these ones have your germ layers. So if they have germ layers, they can be called acoelomates, right? Good. We're done with the jellyfish. Now, on to the tapeworms. This is the phylum Platyhelminths. How I crammed this one, because they are called flatworms, right? If they are called flatworms, this word over here, P-L-A-T in Afrikaans means flat, right? So that's how I remember it. Helminthus. They are called flatworms because they are flat, dorsoventrally flattened. Now, GPS. Let's start. GPS. Let's look at their characteristics. These are free living or parasitic. Some of the free living forms are aquatic. They may live in either fresh water or marine water. It depends, right? The free living organisms are terrestrial and they live in damp environments. So the environments that have water. So basically, they are either free living. Those are your terrestrial. Ne? Those are your terrestrial organisms. Ne? And then they can be free living, ne? In damp sources. So that's your terrestrial. And then other ones can be free living in aquatic environments. So other ones can be aquatic. So you find them almost everywhere, these little buggers. The most common one is your tapeworm that you can either get from cows or pigs. Your pig tapeworm or your cow tapeworm. But that basically wait for you to digest your food and then they absorb the food. Fun fact 101: models in the olden days used to use tapeworms as a form of diet. So basically, they'll ingest the eggs, or they couldn't ingest the tapeworm. They'll ingest the eggs, and then the eggs hatch inside their colon or their intestines, and then they start absorbing the food that they eat. That's how they remain slim. And then when they need to get rid of them, they drink deworming medication. It is not a good idea. You will be malnourished. It is not even funny, right? So the structure. These organisms now develop something that is very interesting. Their sense organs now occur at the where's the other color? At the anterior end, meaning that these organisms have what we call cephalization, having a concentration of most of your sense organs at the anterior end uh, of the organism. Yeah? So these are ventrally flattened organisms. And then if you look at these organisms very carefully, let's go to the top one. Uh-huh. Let's look at this little bug over here. If from this plane, from the top down, if I cut this one in half, I will get two identical halves. But if I cut it from this section here, I will not. So an organism that can be cut from one plane longitudinally and produces two identical halves, we call that what type of symmetry? Bilateral symmetry. So these organisms have what we call bilateral symmetry. However, they have only one digestive opening. So these guys, Shem, they have a blind gut. Shem. Most of them are parasitic, but they have a blind gut. Ne? Their tissue developed from 3 germ layers. So these organisms have what we call 3 germ layers. Hey, now it gets interesting. Now they're starting to evolve. Which ones? Ectoderm, ne? Your endoderm, and your mesoderm. So that is your that is their germ layers. And these organisms are known as tri, meaning 3, pluroblastic. If they have 3 germ layers, they do not have a xylem though. That is the downside to them. Although triple plastic, they do not have a xylem, so they are a xylomate. Okay. The free living flatworms, for example, the ones that are aquatic mostly, they have digestive tracts with many branches. This makes it possible for them to carry food throughout the whole entire animals. The parasitic flatworms have a very poorly developed digestive tract. So what do? Basically, they have hooks, and then they have suckers that attach to the substrate or the host, and then basically they absorb digested food from their host. So they are very parasitic organisms, these ones, né? But very simple in actual fact. Right. So this is your flat worms. The next one. Now these ones are not flatworms, but most of them are they are worms, ne? But what type of worms are they? They are segmented worms. We call them the segmented worms. This is the phylum, ne? Phylum Annelida. Phylum Annelida, aka your segmented worms. And why do we call them segmented worms? The word segmented comes from the term segments. It is in segments. If you look at a typical lychee, for example, or a typical earthworm, ne? You'll notice that it looks like it has lines on it. Ne? It has segments, pieces of it. So that's why they're called segmented worms. So that is the reason we call segmented worms. Now let's get, excuse me, let's get to the crux of things. GPS, where are they found? This phylum mostly are aquatic, they are aquatic and terrestrial. For example, earthworms are aquatic, they live, no, they're not aquatic, man. They are terrestrial. They live in damp soils, or in soil basically. If you dig up just outside in your garden, you might find earthworms. Some of them are aquatic. The aquatic organisms may either live in fresh water or marine water. Their terrestrial worms are found in moist soil most of the time. Most free living are parasitic, like your leech. A leech is parasitic. Ne? Good. And it's called an ectoparasite, meaning it's a parasite outside the body. It will attach itself from outside the body and then start sucking on nutrients. So let's get to the structure of these organisms. Whether they are parasitic or free living, ne, they show cephalizations. Wait, so let's write this is aquatic and terrestrial. Right, so cephalization, they show cephalization. Cephalization is present. That's a good thing. Ne? Good. Then they are just like the previous worms. Worms are bilaterally symmetrical. So they have a bilateral symmetry. If I cut this lychee right over here, from the dorsal to the anterior part, I'll have segment 1 and segment 2. Those are two identical segments, right? Next part, they are also triploblastic, such as their cousins there, the flatworms. Ne? They are triploblastic. What does triploblastic mean? Meaning they have 3 germ layers. Again, they have a body cavity, meaning they are coelomates. These ones have a body cavity now. They are coelomates. Ne? Their epidermis and cuticle and nervous system arose from the ectoderm. So from all of these, let's write it down here. From the triploblastic part, we have the ectoderm of the annelids, of the segmented worm. The ectoderm gave rise to what? To the epidermis. If it was you, it would be the skin. The cuticle, and then it gives rise to the nervous system. That is the ectoderm. Then the gut wall arose from the endoderm. So the endoderm gives rise to the gut wall of these organisms. All the other tissues come from the mesoderm. Tissues such as what? Tissues such as muscles, your blood vessels, for example, the excretory organs, those arose from the mesoderm. From the mesoderm. Good. So that is the phylum Annelida. Good. They are very complex organisms, but they, unlike their cousins, the platyhelminths. Right. Let's move on. Now, they have 2 digestive openings. meaning they have a through gut, unlike their cousins that have one digestive opening. So what does this mean for these guys? This means that they can ingest and digest simultaneous. They have a mouth and an anus. So they have a through gut. Ne? Good. So that is your segmented worms. I'm just going to leave it here, and then in the next session I'm going to complete the next two important, very important, which I regard, phyla, which is your arthropoda and your chordata.